I've been wearing the Dexcom G7 CGM continuous glucose monitor for about 10 weeks now. Sits right here. And I figured it was about time I gave you an updated review on what works and what doesn't work. And of course, I'm also going to give you the download on whether or not I intend on sticking with the Dexcom G7 or if I want to go back to the Dexcom G6, because that is still an option. I'm Christelle from Diabetes Strong, and I've been living with type 1 diabetes since 1997, and I've been wearing a CGM, a continuous glucose monitor, since around 2015-ish. I started out wearing the Medtronic sensor, then I moved to Dexcom G5, then Dexcom G6, and now I'm on the Dexcom G7. I did an initial review back after I had received and worn my first sensor, and there were a few issues with that sensor that made me question, whether or not I was just having a bad sensor or whether or not there were some significant issues with the G7, such as frequent signal loss. So a lot of you have asked me for an update because we all want to know whether or not this is actually worth it, whether or not it's actually an upgrade before we spend a lot of money on it. So in this video, I'm going to give you my 8 key takeaways after wearing the Dexcom G7 for over 10 weeks. Let's go. When I first read about the improved features of the Dexcom G7, what I was most excited about was the 30-minute warm-up period. All the sensors up until the G7 had this 2-hour warm-up period, and that was 2 hours where you did not get any readings, you didn't get any alerts. Turns out I read that wrong. So the warm-up period is up to 30 minutes. That actually means that it can be as little as nothing. Brilliant. If you want to learn how to cut down that warm-up period from 30 minutes to nothing, check out my last video. I will link to it in the end of this video. Anyway, that's a huge upside. That means that I can have my CGM readings on my app. You can also have it on the receiver 24/7 with no interruptions between sensors. Dexcom G7 is FDA cleared for wear on the upper arm, on the back of the upper arm for adults, and it's CE marked for wear on the arm as well as on the stomach. It is the same sensor, it's just 2 different labels. So I'm not saying that you should wear it on your stomach if you're in the US. I'm just saying that now you have the information and you can come up with your own conclusion on whether or not it might work. What I found is that sensor placement matters. It matters a lot, even if we're just talking about back of the arm. I had one sensor that I managed to place a little bit more to the side of the arm, not as far back. And not only was it painful just having it there, but it also meant that I was sleeping on it at night because I'm a side sleeper, which was surprisingly uncomfortable. And I mean, it's a tiny sensor, but it was still really uncomfortable. I also ended up knocking off that sensor. I think it was on the door frame, maybe it was on the fridge. I don't know, but off it came. That sensor also gave me quite a few compression lows. So a compression low is not actually a low blood sugar, but because you're putting pressure on the sensor, it's giving you low glucose alerts. I've also experimented with placing a sensor on my thigh. I used to love that placement with the Dexcom G6, but unfortunately it didn't really work out with this sensor, at least not the way that I did it. I placed that sensor on my upper thigh on the front, and somehow I managed to put weight on it overnight, and I simply twisted it off right out of the overlay tape. So that hurt. It did give me pretty good readings for the 2 days that it lasted, so I do plan on trying that placement again. So I ordered a new overlay tape. I've ordered from something called Skin Grip, and that overlay tape does not have the cutout that the Dexcom overlay tape has. So my hope is that with that kind of overlay tape, the sensor will be better secured. I've also worn a few sensors on my stomach. No complaint about that placement. That worked really well. To sum up, I don't love having the sensor here on my arm. So I will be experimenting with other placements, even though it's not FDA cleared. Now let's talk about adhesion. How well does this sensor stick to the skin? So over the years, I've interacted with a lot of you guys, and what I've come to conclude is that how well a sensor sticks to the skin, that's not just Dexcom, that any of the sensors, is very individual. In my experience, Dexcom G7 sticks just as well to the skin as the Dexcom G6 did. So if you had issues with Dexcom G6 not sticking well to your skin, you might have the same issue with Dexcom G7. In my case, that means that after the 10-day wears up, I have to pry off the sensor or rather use a glue remover. If I just try and pull off the sensor, it really hurts and it will leave my skin red and irritated. This is the 10th day of this sensor. You can see there's a little bit of peeling, but nothing significant. I mean, this is not moving. However, since the surface of the Dexcom G7 tape is so much smaller than the G6, I could see that being an issue if you're already having issues with the Dexcom G6 not really sticking to your skin. There are a few ways that you can improve how well a sensor will stick to your skin. One is to use an alcohol swab before inserting the sensor. Another one can be to use an adhesive barrier or to add an overlay tape. And this is the overlay tape that actually comes with the sensor. In every G7 package, you'll get an overlay tape as well. Let me just show you how to actually put on the overlay tape because I know that can be a little tricky. So first you take off the white paper and make sure that you don't touch the sticky part so you can hold on here to the green part. So here you go. And now you just want to place it over the sensor. You can use a mirror, that might make it a little easier because this is hard to see, but simply press it around the sensor. Try and smooth it out a little bit. You can see I didn't get it completely smooth. But once you've done that, what you want to do is peel off the green plastic. Again, you can try and smoothen out the overlay a little bit more, and there you are. A weird but maybe more of a quirky issue that might not matter to everyone is that the 24-hour graph seems a bit choppy. This is my 24-hour graph. I'm used to Dexcom G6 looking smoother. Again, that probably doesn't matter that much, but what does matter is that the G7 seems to adjust more, so let's say more radically, to blood sugar fluctuations. Check this out. This is from a 24-hour graph. I wish I'd taken a screenshot back when it actually happened so that you'd have a clearer view, but we'll make this work. If you look at 9 p.m., you'll see something a little funky. So what happened here was that the Dexcom was telling me that my blood sugar was low and that it had been low for a while. I had treated it back when I got the first low alert. So at this point I'm like, it's weird, I'm still low. I did a finger stick, I measured my blood sugar, poked my finger, and my blood sugar was actually closer to 100. So at this point, I ignore my Dexcom and I go about my evening. And as you can see here, all of a sudden, the blood sugar then jumps. The blood sugar reading from Dexcom jumps from that 67 up to around 100. So from 67 to 100 in a blink of an eye is not normal for me. I would have understood it if I had calibrated the sensor. I didn't do that. Or if I might have eaten something high glycemic, like had a cup of juice or glucose tabs right then, but I didn't. So it's a little funky. That blood sugar rise that you see over here where we kind of have an upward slope, that makes sense for me. But, from 67 to 100 in that specific situation, that's kind of suspicious. And I've seen that happen quite a bit with the Dexcom G7. It seems almost like all of a sudden the sensor picks up on, hey, I'm off, and it calibrates itself, and it just jumps to the value that you're actually at. Anyway, that kind of self-calibration, I don't know if it actually is a calibration, but let's just call it that, means that my Dexcom will tell me, hey, your blood sugars are rising really quickly because it just went from 67 to 100. Even though that's not really the case, it has been most likely been moving up towards 100 for a while. That just means that, for me at least, I pay attention to the slope of my graphs. So even though my sensor comes up and tells me, hey, your blood sugars are rising quickly, I then also look at the graph. And if it's because it's going from very low, for example, to a higher too quickly for what I know is normal for me, I'll take that into consideration and I won't react as if my blood sugars are rising quickly. Another Dexcom G7 upgrade I'm really excited about and that I use a whole lot are the updated alert features. I can actually silence or put on vibrate all the alerts for up to 6 hours. I was chatting with someone the other day about the new alerts and she asked me a really valid question. She asked, why would I ever want to silence all my alerts? They are for safety after all. That's a really good question. For me, it's very situational when I choose to use that feature. I've used it when I go to the movies. I've used it for example, exercise classes like Pilates or yoga. But the only reason why I'm comfortable using this feature is that I actually have another way of viewing my blood sugars, and that is on my watch. So what that means is that when I have the alerts silenced, I will still be checking in with my blood sugars on my watch. I just won't be looking at my phone. Another feature that I really like is the delayed high alert feature. I have that on for an hour, and that means I will not be alerted of a high blood sugar unless it's been above my threshold for more than an hour. And the reason why this is helpful for me is that usually I know why my blood sugars go high. It's most often because I didn't get my insulin food timing right. That means it might come up a little bit over my threshold and then it usually comes down again. The only reason why I usually stay high is if I didn't take enough insulin for a meal. And I usually won't know that until an hour, maybe even 2 after the meal. If you tend to forget to inject your insulin before meals, I don't think this is a good feature for you to use, because then you want to be alerted if your blood sugars go above your threshold so that you can react and take your insulin. When I wore my first Dexcom G7, and if you watched the first review, you probably heard me say this quite a few times, I had a lot of signal loss. Fortunately, that has not been as big of an issue with the other Dexcom G7s I've tried. It hasn't completely gone away, but lost signal is way further apart, and I actually have had some sensors that had no lost signal at all. But it does seem like the Bluetooth range for Dexcom G7 is shorter than it was for Dexcom G6. The Dexcom range is 20 feet, so that's 6 meters, and that's supposed to be for both devices, so I don't know. I've also had some other sensor issues with the Dexcom G7, but nothing major. And honestly, it's not that different from my experience using Dexcom G6. So this is not really an upgrade, it's just status quo. Someone suggested that I should delete the Dexcom G6 app from my phone. I did that, and I do think that helped. Also, if you look on Dexcom's website, here we'll see that they state that using the iPhone battery saving mode can give issues. So, something to consider. As you can probably hear, I do like my Dexcom G7. I think it has some pretty cool upgrades, but unfortunately, my insurance still doesn't cover it. They cover Dexcom G6, but they do not cover G7 yet. There is a way around that though. If you live in the US and if your insurance is covering your Dexcom G6. If that's the case, you can go to a participating pharmacy, and I can tell you CVS does not participate, but you can go to a participating pharmacy and you can get your prescription for G7 filled for $89, and that is what I do to get my Dexcom G7. And the final thing that I want to bring up, which hopefully will change soon, is that the Dexcom G7 does not work with the Omnipod 5 or the tandem insulin pumps. This hopefully will change soon, but if you're using an integrated system right now, you probably want to stick with G6 until they get it to work with the G7. It does connect with my InPen though, so I get my historic Dexcom data in the app and in analytics. And those are my 8 major takeaways from wearing the Dexcom G7 for over 10 weeks. And yes, I will stay with the Dexcom G7 for now. It is my preferred CGM, and that's mainly because of the warm-up period, or rather no warm-up period, as well as the adjustable alerts. I find it to be just as accurate as the Dexcom G6, and it sticks to my skin just as well as Dexcom G6 did, which is really, really well. The only downside I would say is the occasional signal loss or other signal issues, but I had those with Dexcom G6 as well. So for me, Dexcom G7 comes out on top. What do you think? Have you tried it? What's the good and the bad in your opinion? And if you haven't tried it yet, do you want to? Why? Why not? Leave me a comment down below. And if you like this video, please also give this video a like. If you like this video, if you'd like to see more content from me, remember to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. That is that little bell. That way you'll be informed whenever I post new content. And as promised, if you want to learn how to cut down the warm-up to 0, I have a step-by-step guide for that. You can check that out right here. I appreciate you watching this video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.